actually doing that. So
Nobody did?
he told me to be open for it. He never confirmed.
Open for what?
Tomorrow morning. You forgot to?
No, I didn't.
He's confirming.
Yeah.
8:30 tomorrow.
Okay.
He's confirming.
All right, I'll see you there.
Is that good for you?
Yeah.
No,
I have 4:32, and at this time we'll call the meeting of the Kansas City Commission to order. And with that, Mayor Pro Tem, would you lead us in invocation?
I'll love to. You're all pray with me?
Dearly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much for all that you do for us in the city, Father. Thank you for the continued protection of the men and women that serve the city. And Father, we just thank you for the continued protection of the citizens of the city. And Father, just be with us tonight as we make important decisions about our community and our future. And just continue to keep us healthy. Forgive us when we mess it up. In Christ's name we pray.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that takes us to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of August 16th, 2021.
There's no changes. I move we approve.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as written. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. All right, public comments from interested citizens. And Gretchen, looks like we do have one person that signed in here. Kenneth Kemp?
That's me.
Did I pronounce that right, Ken?
Kenneth Kemp, yes.
Okay.
Is this where I go?
Yes. If you would, tell us your name and your address.
Okay.
And, yes.
I have a letter prepared for y'all, but I'm just going to read it. If you would like a copy of it, when I'm done, I'll be glad to give you a copy. Okay. Members of the City Council, thank you for allowing me to speak this afternoon. Once again, my name is Kenneth Kemp. I live here in Canyon at 89 Hunsley Hills Boulevard. I work for Canyon ISD at Lakeview Elementary as a special education teacher. I'm here today asking you to consider a new city ordinance which will limit the amount of lighting that a residential structure can use, specifically the use of flood lighting. Let me give you some background information. Sorry, I'm very nervous. Okay.
Good. You're doing good.
Let me begin. Okay. The house next door to me at 79 Gentywood has been under construction for more than a year now. The house is owned by the LLC 79J Property, which is comprised of two members. That would be John Sellers and Jared Metter. The house and property are being renovated by Mr. Metter. The north side of this property is adjacent to the south side of my property. At the beginning of the summer, in June, my husband, Bill Kent, had a friendly conversation with Mr. Metter about the construction of the fence that our properties share. My husband offered to split the cost of a rock-style fence. Mr. Metter declined the offer, so my husband and him agreed on a way for him to build the fence without weakening the cement foundation of our existing fence. When the construction of Mr. Metter's fence was completed, he did not follow through with the plan he and my husband had agreed upon. These actions resulted in a dispute. So after that, beginning in July, 2 floodlights were installed on the upper story soffit on the east and north sides of the exterior. Since that time, our property, which is the front and backyards, and the inside of our house has been flooded with light each night. Due to this dispute, my husband asked me not to confront Mr. Metter about turning the lights off, so I called the police. On Sunday, August 8th, of 2021, Officer Alexander responded to my call and eventually convinced Mr. Metter to turn the floodlights off. That was our only dark and peaceful night since the lights were installed. I called Officer Alexander the next night when the lights came on, but he said he couldn't issue Mr. Metter a citation since there's no Canyon City ordinance concerning invasive lighting. My next step was to contact the owner of the property, or the other owner of the property, Mr. Sellers. I emailed him detailing my problem and asked him for help. A couple of days later, Mr. Sellers' attorney, Brad Hittman, responded by phone and assured me that he would work to find a resolution, inviting me to call him if I ever needed anything else. I have communicated with him several times that the problem still exists, with no response from him or Mr. Sellers. Nothing has changed, except Mr. Metter has added another light and a surveillance camera pointed at my backyard, as well as a period of very loud, heavy metal music and or very profane rap music. So this last Sunday night, I called the police again because of the music, and Officer Mancias came and assisted, and he has a record of one of these incidents last Sunday on September 5th, about 9:45. So these lights are permanent. They're wired into the soffit. They're about like this. They look like a computer monitor, and they put out enormous amounts of light. If and when Mr. Metter decides to sell this property, okay, or move out, he lives there, the next owner will have the opportunity to flood my yard with light. I want to be very clear. I'm not opposed to normal standard outside lighting, which this house already has. Without a city ordinance addressing this issue, nothing can be done to lawfully enforce the ending of this intrusion. I'm just asking for your help and advice on any way I can solve this issue. Please consider visiting me at my house after dark if you want to understand and witness my experience, because nobody really gets it till they come over, and then they're just like they can't believe it. It's like blinding. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Kenneth. It's up to our city staff.
Thank you.
You make sure to leave your contact with Ms. Mercer down there so we can contact you.
Okay,
Paul.
Okay, thank you.
Here's my card too.
Okay, that takes us to item number 6, to consider and take appropriate action on recommendation from the Board of City Development, BCD, for 2022.
Follow up on public comment. We had a public comment last time from Mr. Walt Davis, gentleman that lives out in Canyon East. Brendan and I and Chris went out there personally. He's got some valid concerns on some of the alleys right at the ends. The water's running off back there. It's creating holes almost in each alley that we looked at. Brendan is going to try a few the street crew to help do those with some asphalt. So definitely concerns there. And then we're also, there's some runoff right there. If you come off the access road, I can't remember the street. Chris, do you remember that street? What was that street, Brendan? Right off the access road into Canyon East.
Brandy Lane.
Brandy Lane. Come off there. Some of the that land zipped up higher, and so the dirt is running off into the road, and the street's going to try to pressure wash or blow it out. So, additionally, I asked Chris to get with Planning and Development to remind citizens, especially in Canyon East, that they are responsible for maintaining the alleyway. There was a lot of growth in the alleys over there. I know Chris is getting with
That was Dan with them, okay, and I took on it, so.
Okay.
And Brenda can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the alley's already been repaired.
Is that correct? Okay.
Those 3 that we looked at.
So we repaired 3 alleys out there, and those are, I think those are wrapped, Brennan, right? Were those just wrapped
Yes.
alleys? Okay. So try to address that. It's a little bit. Most of those alleys do have a cement apron, but it's a little bit above the cement apron that's really occurring. It's clear in both alleys, the same spot on different blocks. So we did take a look at those addresses.
consider and take appropriate action on recommendation from Board of City Development, BCD, for 2022 budget. John?
You all have a memo in your packet that talks about the BCD board, the Board of City Development meeting. That we had a Zoom meeting on August the 10th, and we reviewed all the requests from the various organizations that sent in requests for the hotel tax. BCD awards that. Went through there and looked at our budget for this year. Revenue has picked back up again. The hotels have had a good summer. So we've really kind of crawled out of the issues that were created by COVID with them, which is a good thing. And then we gave an estimate talked about an estimated income for next year, and the fact that we wanted to build the reserve back up again. Our reserve had gotten very, very small, and we wanted to build that back up. So they agreed to a budget of around $220,000 is what we thought we would have coming in as far as income, and then they set a budget of $200,000. So you can see in the memo there what each of the groups that responded requested. WT requested $80,000. They were awarded $60,000. The Chamber was $168,000. They were awarded $37,000. Main Street was $40,500. They were awarded $23,000. Texas $45,000. They were awarded $37,000. Panhandle Plains Historical Museum $45,000 and were awarded $37,000. We have a billboard that we rent also, so that's $7,000, and then electricity for that runs about $200 a year. So that got them to their $200,001 and $200. So
Can you remind everybody who's on that board, John?
yes, we have one of our city council members is still on that. Our commissioners is still on there. And then we have Jim Bryant on there. Look at my roster here. Gina Woodard, George Nestor, and Terry Woodgen. We're all members of that. And we will be replacing Kelsey. That was something we talked about. I think we talked about rolling off of that, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll be replacing her in the near future on that. A good group. Gina, working for the university at the Economic Center and Small Business Center in Amarillo, really provides a lot of input. Of course, Jim Bryan does. And George, as a small business guy, knows a lot about tourism in Canyon because he's one of our major tourist attractions at this point in time. So that's kind of where we are. We had $391,000 worth of requests, and we were not able to keep that.
All right. Any questions for John?
John, is that pretty typical that the chamber asks for that much and not get it?
Yes. I've got a spreadsheet here. The awards over the past few years. I'll go specifically to the chamber. That was your question. 2017, 89. 2018, 93. 82 and 19. 39 last year. And 37 this year.
I move we adopt the 2022 Board of City Development budget as presented.
Have a motion and second to adopt the 2022 BCD budget as presented. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'll send letters out tomorrow. They're on my desk ready to go, so I'll send those out to let everybody know what they will do.
All right. Item number 7 is to consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 34-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon enacting ordinance number 892, prescribing limitations on parking for standing motor vehicles or trailers during parade to be held on October 9, 2021 in the City of Canyon. Grace?
Yes, sir. The homecoming parade will take place on Russell Long Boulevard. So that's the only street that we'll be closing off this year. They're not going to encompass any of 4th Avenue. It'll be closed from 10 to 4, and they'll start at the United Bank and come all the way down Russell Long. Maybe there's a map.
To the fine arts.
Yeah, to the fine arts. Yeah, they've requested from 10 a.m. to 4, and you can see where it starts at United and then down to Fine Arts, where the, that one, which dorm.
That's right beside where Stafford was in the large fine arts parking lot there.
Yeah. So the Deputy Chief, Police Chief Byrd made this request and put in the application for the permit. Everything should be in line. There shouldn't be any involvement with tech stops, since that is no longer state highway, it's a city street. So it's just us approving for that to be closed off. And I would request approval of the resolution closing Russell Long Boulevard.
I move that we approve resolution 34, 2025. It's allowing for the closure of Russell Long Boulevard on October 9th, WT homecoming.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 8 is consider and take appropriate action on a request for city infrastructure expansion from Mark Hughes regarding the proposed development on 217 in reference to Canyon Code Ordinance Chapter 51, Sewer and Water Subchapter, Water and Sewer Main Connections, Section 51, 10. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've detailed significant amount of information in this agenda item for y'all. Megan, if you'll pull up the map. Right there, or Gretchen. This is the Hughes property that's being requested. Mark and his engineer are both here. We're going to turn the floor over to them here in a second to have conversation with them and let them say their piece. And then once they have continued, city staff and commission will adjourn at this table to look over the maps and the areas we're looking at for this project and to see what we want to do moving forward. So, everything I've kind of addressed in here, we've got several options to think about that we pulled after some previous discussions. We will go over that. We'll go over that here in a few minutes. So, but I want Mark and Dustin to say everything they want to say. They've talked to staff 2 or 3 times. We've enjoyed our conversations. They have an idea of where the dilemma is on this. And so, Mark?
I would like, can I share some information with everyone?
Yeah, come on up, Mark. You can do that.
I'll share with John.
Okay. So my name is Mark Hughes. Grew up here in Canyon and love the city of Canyon. And I'm just an investor. I own 3 different businesses here in Canyon, and investing is primarily what we do. Investing and developing. I have looked at several other cities to build in, and I keep coming back to Canyon because not only because this is where I grew up, because it truly is statistically is a place that is very much needed for more development inside the city limits. Mainly the focus being on a curb and gutter development. As you all know, Madison Park is completely sold out, along with Canyon East, and there's a few more spots that haven't been built on yet, but they have been sold. And at the moment, I've done a lot of research on what it would take to build another curb and gutter development in Canyon on a larger scale. I know that there is a few different properties that would work, that would be on a lot smaller scale than this. But on a large scale, I looked south, and it didn't work because of the drop-off after you leave Canyon going south. It didn't the infrastructure wasn't there south, and the drainage didn't work south. I looked north, and kind of the options that we got into with having not having the infrastructure going north into the new development that's out there, I just drew a blank. Spring Canyon. There was lots of work that had to go in to get what they needed, and weren't supplied everything that they needed because of cost and everything that comes along with it. West, this wasn't an option because there wasn't infrastructure at all. We're getting too far away from everything, and it also drops off after Brown Road, so it doesn't work there. So really it only left me east. Actually, this piece of property that's highlighted has been on my mind since 2006. That was the first time I tried purchasing this property in 2006, and the landowner gave me a price in 2006, and it still stood till just here recently as I got it purchased of what the price was. It was a very large number for the amount of acres that it is. If it doesn't work for a development, I got about 700 years of running cattle to pay it off. So development is really what I'm looking to do on this piece of property. As we can see on the map with Canyon East there, and them running out of infrastructure that's there, I hired someone just to read through your comprehensive plan and goals of what you wanted as a city. If someone was going to develop, kind of what your points are, and if you'll look on that the handout, I won't waste your time. You can read through the information that's on there, but we really focused on everything that you asked for. This property, I feel like is there. It fits all the goals of everything that you requested. The main thing that I really want to do is I really want curb and gutter, and I don't want alleys. And it was interesting that comment came up earlier about alleys and people maintaining them. That's one thing I don't want in this. I'm looking for density, and I really enjoyed the Madison Park was great. I actually sold my home and moved into Madison Park while I built my place. And so I lived right across the street from the park next to Cody for a little while, and enjoyed it. I had a terrible neighbor, but
He's already moved.
I just shot his light out. But anyways, we just I really enjoyed that. My kids, we grew up in the country. I've never lived in town before, so it was a life change for me for 8 months while I lived there. But it was great. My kids enjoyed to ride their bikes and have fun and play there, and that's kind of my mindset of what I have is that kind of density, that kind of neighborhood. And this property works for drainage works well because everything is funneled to the exact location of where we need it to go, relatively speaking. And then also I knew there was city water, city sewer, and fiber optic and power. And if you're a developer, those are the 4 things you go after every time. And I've developed outside the city of Canyon mainly because, to be honest, it intimidated me. I went through Randall County. We completed our second development and working on 3, 4, and 5 at the moment. That we have 3 is in process, and 4 and 5 are in engineering stages. And so this is where I want to focus, and this is where I want to develop. But I do feel like there is a need for Canyon for curb and gutter, because as of today, if you want to go and build a house in a curb and gutter inside the city limits and have all of the things that you provide for your city customers, we don't have it. It's just not there. Everything is full. There's development still going on, but everything is already either sold to another builder or something. There's no available lots for the future. And so, and as far as I'm aware of, I may be wrong, but I don't think there's anything that's pulling the trigger this week on a curb and gutter. I do have the property. I do have the resources to make my end of the construction project work. There is one issue, and the issue is water. There's water there, but there's not enough pressure. As far as, to my understanding, Canyon East already has some water pressure issues that the city has an issue with at the moment. And so I know that me taking more of that water away, because it's coming out of the same pipeline, is going to cause more of an issue for them. So the problem that needs to be addressed is how to get, 1, to be annexed in, 2, the water issue. From our meetings that I've had with some of you, the sewer should be able to work for everything that we are wanting to do. And so I'm here to ask for help and to see, hopefully for y'all to see the need, but obviously all of you know of Canyon for curb and gutter development is much needed. As you can see, at the moment we're needing about 100 more houses per year if you look on the need side. Even if we pulled the trigger today on this for us to go, before I could have my first house built and ready for someone to move into would be 18 months, 16 months from now, if it was ready to pull the trigger today. And so we're looking at 2 and possibly however long this takes for us to get this situation planned out. You know, we're looking at 2 years before the first house is available for someone to move into. So we're going to be 200 houses behind in Canyon, and so it's an issue. And I know that there's been several different developments that have came across your table, but this is one that is already, it's not just an idea, it's something that's ready to go, that's been purchased and ready to move equipment to us as soon as you give me the resources that we need, and my engineering company can give me the files that I need to put in my equipment. We're ready to start construction. One other thing that I will say is, at the moment, as of updated this morning at 9 o'clock, I do have buyers that are ready to purchase a third of the development and start up to 75 houses in the first 30 days. I think that's all I have. I think from here is thoughts of what we need to do from here.
Well done, Mark. Well done.
Thank you.
Commission, before we turn things over to have a commission staff conversation out of that table, does anybody have any questions for Mark or his engineer?
You know what price point you want for the lots?
Not yet. Not until I get this situation figured out. I mean, it's hard for me to say at all until I know on the infrastructure what that's going to look like. I mean, the hope is anywhere from $35,000 to $45,000 per lot. But there's so many unknowns at the moment.
Say the least.
Yes, yes, sir. So it's kind of hard for me to, I guess, answer that for sure.
So Joe, you want us to
Yep.
go out here?
Yeah, and we have the development review team.
I will
sit down.
say one more thing, if you don't mind. Cost is a huge part of this. The reason why I wanted this piece of property is because it did have all the utilities there that what I thought was going to be enough. I have other pieces of property that are that could be developed and properties that could be bought, but none of them that have the infrastructure that I need. All of them need lift stations or have nothing at all. So my lot cost would be tremendously more anywhere else I develop. But for the consumer, this is going to be the cheapest thing per lot basis that I could find because it had all the infrastructure on the property.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Great job. If we want to come out here, you guys, we're going to show you some maps and take a look at some of this. We've been talking about this for a while.
Do you want me at this table?
You can just sit right there and find out. Yes.
I'll wait till everybody sits first. You're the brains behind all this. We need you. Here, Adolfo, you can get the next couple.
Trying to social.
I can't disagree with anything Mark had to say, you guys. From a planning perspective, this is our comprehensive plan. This is the growth areas that we're looking at. And Danny and I are going to hit these really quick. But C is Spring Canyon. That one's done. Crestview is on the road. Rock Rose. This will be up for sale and debate. And they got that. So this is pretty prime, but it's our most spoken for. They've got water and sewer here. This is a little more treacherous terrain, as we found out with Rocky Ridge. Right here, we've got another development. It's on the southern map that's happening right now. Mr. Martin owns some of this, and there's been discussion with us. This will need a lift station right here at the creek. B is an interesting beast. I'm not sure what to think about B, but it's another growth area. Very terrain intensive out there. Not a lot of infrastructure from the city side, but it's very terrain intensive.
You know a lot of that's in the floodplain?
Some right here, Cody, right there. The creek is. Yeah, so that makes it just so much more cost.
Pretty much I-27 back to the west.
Yeah, we're going to have to put our heads back to that, see what we can do. Well, and the other prime one, which is A on the list, is this. And here's Mark's lot here. Most of y'all know the trailer park's right there. It's been there, God, man, 90s, 80s. You know, Paul, you remember when that? Been there a long time. 70s have been that far back. It's right there on the edge. Part of Mark's property is actually already in the city limits. That corner right there is in. But from a staff standpoint, we agree this is the area to grow per our comprehensive plan. That's what we're looking at. Unfortunately, it's right. Pressure's right at the TCEQ limitation, probably on this side. For sewer, hypothetically, if this went, sewer would be done on this side. There would be no more capacity for sewer until we upgrade hospital drives, force main.
Well, without me having another look at the study, I'm not sure we can get all of it. But yeah, but ultimately we'll have to upgrade lift station number 5. And
Thoughts from you?
Yeah, lift station 5 is good for right now, but it will be.
We'll look at that here in a second on that. So from a comprehensive plan side, this seems to be an area to grow per our comp plan that we did. So I just wanted to touch on that.
It would be positive. It needs to be done for this or not. For this, it's fine. Okay, beyond that, it's going to be. I mean, that'll be really good.
The one down there is by Honey Creek down the draw.
Yeah.
No, just like I was telling some of the other folks, we probably had more people that have approached this and basically, for lack of a better term, turned away in this area. Because there's a lot of interest in that area, but that lack of infrastructure out there, lack of sewer capacity and water capacity. We've talked to at least 4 people I think up that intersection in that area.
I know this has been for sale too.
The limit of your infrastructure is down 4th Street there. You have sewer and water dead end. So that's why there's nothing east of it. Whereas everything else is down with people. So that's why that area is where that is.
Any other thoughts on the comp plan, you guys, before I go to the next map?
And just based on being a part of that comprehensive planning, I think the commercial retail aspect of trying to get towards I-20 or towards 217 in Washington was very important for commercial retail, trying to get people back from the canyon into the city. The quicker we grow that way.
We do have one pending right now, Danny, on the corner right there. Is that public yet? Is that public?
No.
Okay. We have one pending on this corner that we're in disclosed discussions about. Concerns of commercial. Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate your presence. All right. So we met with each of y'all to talk about this. Hold on. So we'll go over some of the Canyon East is one of our recent 350 lots. We've had some interest in here in proposed development. Don't remember we had a temp lift station for this one. They're just having a hard time with rising costs to make the impact work on this, so we have to have a temp lift station there. You remember wastewater treatment plants this way. City Planning 101, you go towards your wastewater treatment plant. That's the way you're supposed to grow towards. You can see all our lift stations here. Dustin just mentioned lift station 5, talked about the capacity there. Here's Mark's. Mark's got about 100 acres, 385 lots. You can see where's purchase of land. Dustin's working on Hunter Estates Development, ETJ. This is question mark, Spring Canyon. So we're pretty past on the north. So I don't think there's much more going towards the north. And then we own this right here. And then we got Stone Creek's going on right now. Dustin and I are working on the development agreement for that. Madison Park, 350. Paul's one of the last builders out there. I think they got 5 lots left. Is that it, Paul? Maybe 6? And I think that's fully built out at that point in time, Denny. Maybe a few on Highland still, I think. We got 5 or 6 in Enclave and maybe 5 or 6 on Highland on Randy Street.
I think that's
Or 5 or 6.
Maybe they're all sold, but they haven't been built yet, have they? Nothing's available. So that one's done. Crestviews is on the way. That one's going to get done. Rock Rose, unsure what their development is, but they're holding on to that. Gerald property right here is in the works, and then I'm not sure on the backside. We've had the lost development right now. This project is on the move. Unfortunately, lift station is at the end. 2 right here cannot handle the loss. So staff is working on that in addition to this one. So that's kind of what we've got development-wise. Ultimately, a lot of it's going back to capacity where we're at. So, being at that, we talked last time, we're trying to take a solution-based approach to this. So we included 3 options in the agenda packet. All those options come with a price. Adolfo, when you go over those options in detail, you and Dan and Chris?
Option 1 would be for the Hughes property to operate its own public water supply. They would have their own wells, their own little pump station, storage, and a hydrodynamic tank to maintain pressure. That with construction engineering is estimated about $2 million, and that would be to serve just that property alone. And it would be its own public water supply. It would be tied into city services, and that would be water only. So that's option 1. Option 2 would be for the city to build a pump station, elevated storage, ground storage tank, and their own water supply, and then tie into their own system, and that would be able to serve the Hughes property, and then if they were to develop going east, it would be able to serve that to a certain extent, as long as you continue to get more water to serve that. That comes with some liabilities because it would be on its own, possibly it's not interconnected, so it has to go down, take that.
So you said it can serve to what extent? What's your prediction on how far out that goes?
We don't do that here, but it's limited to how much storage you have. So if you do a 100 or 200,000 gallon tank, already tank, you can do 5,000 actually.
1,000 homes.
Yeah.
We did it to 200,000 gallon water.
So 385 would be development, and the rest would be over to whichever land out here wants to develop.
But you'd have no sewer mixed into that.
That's still no
Hughes
sewer.
would take the sewer.
Yeah. So, option number 3 would be basically option number 2 plus running the transmission line from Kim Road Pump Station all the way down this way to the road here, to that pump station, interconnecting, create a big loop that would supply it from both sides, and then that opens up this service area.
Yep, there it is.
The same limit apply, 1,000 connections, but anywhere in there, 1,000 connections. If you wanted to go bigger, you do bigger tank, bigger storage, you double it, do 2,000 connections. And so, if it goes to this area, the limit is going to be how big you want to go up front, or if you continue to add pump station and storage as areas continue to grow, which is typically how it's done. You grow as development grows. But this would provide supply, and you have a completed loop around that would open up the upper pressure point. So that alleviates the problem for development and any other areas that have not been able to develop.
And the difference in prices?
That one with engineering and construction comes at a little over 19 million.
And the other one was what?
4 million, 4.5.
So, just from no political stance whatsoever, I'll caveat this, from a logical, sensible direction, it's better to build out like this than it is to one at a time. we one at a time, like we did Mark, and somebody came along next, and we did that version, someone else came along. It's gonna cost 3 to 6 times more of the infrastructure, and it's not gonna help. It's gonna make it
Go ahead. 19, that isn't the sewer.
No, that's just the water.
We're still having to bid for sewer.
Right,
That's
that
correct.
would be another issue, but what he's saying is correct. You know, obviously, with construction, everything always goes up, so if you do it all up front, it's cheaper to do now, but the problem is, it's not that big.
And you're taking the risk, the city's taking the risk. So, ultimately, if you wanted to serve this whole plain, we'd probably need a 2 million gallon tower. We'd probably be able to take care of that whole area. So, that's not included in this number. So there's a bunch, the global picture of this, and Mark's kind of the poster child, I told him, is, you know, we need to think how we want to approach development. And as I told, no is an answer on that as well. Or we just retroactively doing it, that's what we're doing now, we're doing it on a case-by-case basis. Somebody comes, I ask for options from the engineer, he brings it back to us to look at, to see if it's work. That's what we're here today, we're looking at those options. Moving forward, that's kind of how we're addressing things, just on a case-by-case. And it's also first come, first served. So if it's there, water and sewer, you know, it's first come, first served, otherwise whoever has it. However, we're limited on first come, first served, because we're pretty much, as I went on the plan, pretty much getting tapped in a lot of areas. Which comes back to what's the commission's thoughts on continuing to grow, how we want to grow, and ultimately the elephant in the room is the financial aspect of how do we pay for it. I mean, we can't, unless we go out for a bond, an election to the people, there's nothing we can do to take out. I mean, if we did probably 20, probably up to 22 for water, if we did $2 million tower.
Yeah.
What's the 2 million? It's a big one. That's bigger than Amarillo's biggest one's like 1, isn't it?
Yeah, that'd be massive.
It'd be massive. But it would serve this whole area. And I've got that area pulled up, commission on that map, so you can see the satellite. One of the things that, you know, John had a good comment today, so I'll give him kudos for that. How much is developed out there? Well, there's not a lot out there, honestly. You've got some in Smoky Hollow, over off Hunsley, and was it Deer Ridge? I think Deer Ridge over there. Mark's development's over on Washington. One of his developments is over on Washington. Several of his, but that red area is this map on there, so you can see what is and what isn't out there from a land perspective.
Is it all Powderville or Powderville? Is that right too?
Yeah, it pretty much ends Cody at the right there where Barzee is, all that. Yeah, where the canyon is, where the backside. Yeah.
That's already been developed, and
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to annex it. So. But the majority of it is undeveloped.
So globally, we're trying to find some solutions. Obviously, that looking at this, you know, staff's idea would be to A, look at a full build out, and B, run a return on investment analysis with the same outfit we did last summer to see what that looks like. That would be our promise. However, we don't know how to pay for it, and that doesn't take care of the current need right now. But we can't not look at this. We cannot not look at this globally from this perspective.
So to do all that, then we still don't address the sewer piece of it. So
Correct.
really to make that feasible to develop that, then that's on another piece then.
Yeah, that would be part of what we'd like to have our engineer look at. We could look at that piece too, in addition to see what that would take. The good thing is the plant's not terribly that far out here, so.
But would some of that do the half-acre lot?
You could do septic in the city one.
Yeah, but that starts to really affect your ROI dramatically. It's the density that he's talking about that causes your return on your investment to be much greater.
I don't know if that would log those big old lots.
Anybody have any thoughts?
Marker, that's what do y'all think about?
Well, I mean, I think for one is just the option of, did we find out, can I even underfund the water system inside the system?
Chuck and I are still looking at that. So we're trying to see if you can do that like you would a mud kind of a thing, Mark. So my gut's leaning to yes, but we're still double checking.
I mean,
He wanted to know if he could operate a public water system inside of our jurisdictions. Now, Houston does this all the time. They take muds in, which are different, or, you know, their own taxing districts.
But they're pre-established.
They're pre-established technically beforehand, so we're not exactly sure on that answer. That is one of the things we'd like to look at.
I would make it very clear that is not my, I would prefer not to hold the water system. Unfortunately, because of a situation in the past where I came and asked him for water on a different development, and it didn't work out. I now own the public water system, and for an individual, it's meant for a city. I mean, now that I own one, it's meant for a city to own. I mean, there's a lot to it for me, and it's just, that would not be my primary goal.
Yeah, I would think ideally even for the city, that's.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it really muddies the water of
Separate, yeah.
how that would even work.
Right.
And logistically, yeah. The one thing about it is it sounds like everywhere there's an issue, either water or sewer, everywhere we're at. And when I bought this property, oh my goodness, there's power, fiber, water, and sewer. It's like, this is the only piece of property in Canyon, in any direction I could go. It's literally, physically, the only one that works. And so, except until I ran into the pressure, and the water's there. And the one thing I would like for you to look into is what the highest elevation of Canyon East is furthest east house, northeast house versus my northeast corner.
You have it, you kind of see here, like your property, and that pressure point comes right through. And so it gets the hell in the Canyon East, so that's where they have low pressure issues where they still meet, but they're real low.
Is that 20 PSI? Was the PSI per tap?
20 with the fire flow going.
20 PSI?
Yeah, but you always want to have at least 35.
35
It's 35.
normal operating,
Yeah.
or 20 in an emergency.
35 is what we go. Per connection, right?
Yeah.
I had a thought on this. I'm not an engineer, but what if the water supply, since it's there, if we went all the way to the very far northeast corner and we put the capacity way more than what you need? I don't know how long you have to have such and such PSI for how long in a fire situation, but if you had the storage with booster pumps coming out of there to boost everything out what it needs to be. You can still circle, you're not having to
It's
add
gonna run
one
for how many hours with the fire? Do you remember fire code? 2 hours, Dennis?
1,500 gallons per minute.
2 gallons per minute?
1,500 gallons per minute.
1,500 gallons per minute.
20 PSI residual for minimum 2 hours.
You could probably have a separate hydromatic in those instances, maybe.
It's just a thought to where it can still, all of your coordination and all of your everything is already in the loop. It's nothing that you're adding to you're just adding a big storage facility and pump that back out.
And we'd have it, you'd have half a million? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it could be an option, Mark, we can look at that. So.
And honestly, I mean, from my perspective, of course, I'm looking for the fastest one.
Right.
For one, I'm the one paying interest on the land, and I've got buyers on the table that are waiting on me. And so I'm just like, trying to figure that portion of it out. So, obviously, when I see the global scale of it, I feel like a dot on the table.
Half in, half out.
Yeah. So I guess you do have a lot of your infrastructure is here, and like we talked about, it is the most set up infrastructure piece of property. What can we do to put a Band-Aid on this 100 homes per year that we need for the growth that we have as you plan for this larger scale operation?
I do have an idea, but it's not sexy, and it does cost money, and somebody has to bear the brunt of that cost. And I don't know, I have to look at the legal with Chuck, but it would be to do this, do the $2 million option, the hydromatic tank, and run it through there. And so I think we could get enough with that, and then we assess the homeowners in that, or something, or do some kind of hybrid of something. It's gonna jack Mark's prices up, obviously, and I know you're probably not inclined to that, but that's a big ticket out, the $2 million against 385 lots.
You're talking like a bid?
That or like a street assessment, sort of. Just assess them all at the sale of the properties, and Chuck and I would need to look into the legality, but you could also do a bid too, you guys.
Said you doing a storage tank back there?
You'd have to do, what's the $2 million option, Scott?
Are you saying the city do the $2 million?
I don't know who would be. Somebody, Paul. I'm not saying the city would do it, but I think this is probably the best as a Band-Aid solution. Just like the we were gonna do a temporary lift station here. That's temporary. Who knows how long it'll be until a lift station's built up there, but I look at that in the same kind of purview, like a temporary lift station, a temporary system. It would be its own system. And have a hydromatic tank, a pump station, well, and ground storage. It'd be a $2 million option right there.
Does it also tie into the existing city water to go into that tank, or is it just off that well?
That's part of some of the things we would need to get more details on with the engineer on that.
If you want it tied in, if there's a way, I don't know, if it's your time or not, but if there's a backflow preventer to tie in, you'd also get capacity from the city that way and help supplement.
By putting it in that tank in there.
Yeah.
So can the city do this?
I think we could, yes. It's not what ideally for city staff, it's not how we typically do that, but it would be a Band-Aid solution.
What do you mean it's not typically how you would do it?
You don't, the hydromatic tank is meant for small systems. It's not meant for.
I thought you meant typically we would do that.
No, I.
Me doing this, does the city do this?
Do I recommend that?
Would you be happy with that?
I think the staff would have a lot more work to do with doing that. And making sure it operates, like I said, it's not normal to do it that way. So it would be my first recommendation.
Do we have a system like that anywhere?
No. I've done several with Brain Engineers out in the middle of nowhere. Some of these hydromatic tanks are meant for no more than 200 connections at the
Yeah,
most.
they're very small because the tanks, they can't be that big. They're pressure, yeah. Yeah, so,
But
you
why
then
does
have to have
why does it have to have air? Why can't it just be a storage facility with a pump, lift pump? or
Because the power goes
booster
out,
pumps?
then you'd have to have a backup generator.
That would be another discussion item.
When the power goes out, you'll get, the air pressure will last for quite a while.
In that hydromatic tank. You see sometimes where people have hydromatic tanks specifically ready to put up for fire protection. I don't know if you've seen that, Dennis, at all. Have you seen any communities that have that? It's very rare, but I have seen some. That's the Band-Aid option. Could it work? Yes. Someone's still got to put that deal.
And the next item on your agenda is about funding.
Correct.
So at this point in time, I'm just throwing that out there, Paul. I mean, obviously your question was moving toward a funding question that you asked Joe a while ago. Our next item, we're going to discuss the options for funding and in general, not specific for this project. It just happens that Mark is here and there's a project that we're talking about. But we will look at that next one.
So as bottom line, we're not gonna be able to figure this out today, right? I mean,
Staff would recommend the commission allow us to do a full global build out of what this would take, infrastructure wise, water and sewer, and then run an economic study on this area for return on investment like we did last summer.
That doesn't help market.
No, sir, it does not. That is correct.
What's your timeline there?
What do you think?
3 months, 3 to 6 months to get the ROIs?
Yeah, probably 3 to 6 months on our, but it goes back to Paul's right, it does not address Mark's issue.
And I throw one more thing on there.
Go ahead, Paul.
I guess my question would be, is there any interest in you helping the city with this, or is it something you don't want the city to do maybe by themselves?
I mean, ideally, from what I had to pay for the property, that was the whole reason I bought the property for what I did, because it had the infrastructure there, so it's all gonna go back to your question a while ago, is what's my water cost?
It's all a business decision, if you
Sure.
make the numbers work for a lot.
Yeah, and the buyers that I have on the table, no, not a big go. If I had to take that 2 million, divide it into my lot cost, it wouldn't work.
I would say over 2 million.
Well, but I mean, if that was the case, and so, I mean, I'm not saying no, but there's something that I would throw on the table is some water rights on the property, and maybe, having it to where you could have some wells that, you could have on the property to help, I mean, this isn't just a one-shot deal, I've got lots of developments going, so I'm not just trying to just fix this one deal and nothing else. I would love to see you do this, and I'm interested in some of the property that's for sale that you were talking about, possibly. So I would like to see the option of this, being fixed temporarily, but then, I mean, I'm also interested in the bigger picture as well, if this is where I'm gonna continue to invest.
That's kind of where the staff's.
Yeah, and we told Mark prior to coming to this meeting on the phone just Friday, that not to expect an answer to come out of this room today.
Oh, yeah, no.
But nonetheless, he does need an answer sooner or later.
Sooner or later.
What happens to the infrastructure of the $2 million deal if, for some reason, we find a way to do the 19?
That's another reason I would recommend that will only ever serve that area. It can't do more than that.
My question, though, is they don't.
However, if this does come to fruition, you do build the water tower, build all that, all you have to do is take the hydromatic tank offline and tie into the system and you're good to go.
Because you reuse the piping and all that, for storage. But yeah, I mean, that $2 million is gonna go to serve just that area. And then you do the additional 4, then.
Percentage of the infrastructure that we would get to reuse? Small.
Percentage. I mean.
Ballpark.
Well, that's just for the pressure system. I mean, half. You get to keep that storage, you can keep the well. But once you have everything else in there, you really wouldn't use it. You can try to reuse it somewhere else, but it would, after that, it's kind of, it would just be used equipment.
That's kind of the same thing with that's why I go back to the 10 lift stations, the same thing with the 3 lift stations. That would come off and gone after how many years? You know, if we started today to do this project, it would take us at least 3 years to do this project, right? If we were still ready today. So, I mean, if we did this, it could be 5, 7, 10 years if this got full trigger today. But you know, that's the goal is, you know, we would like to start phase 1 of the funding solutions in our next agenda item to do that. In addition to that, we could supplement working with that same consultant to find a solution here too, if they had any other ideas as well.
So my time is of the essence for me, and so for me, my next option is 80 lots versus I'm skipping out on 300 homes if I go to a 1-acre development. And to get the volume for what I had to pay for the property, it's like some of the other developments that I've done. I didn't get $5,000 an acre for it, and so my numbers are going to be totally different. It would have to be some kind of a multi-family. Yeah.
To make the density.
To make the density. I mean, to make the numbers work for me. So it's going to be tons of wells and huge septics, and I mean, it's not what I want to do, but I've already spent the money, so I got to go to Plan B at some point. And I think that's something that I think everybody may need to think about in the future is all of these 1-acre developments that are being done. 75% of them are being done because inside of City of Amarillo and Canyon, it's difficult to just go buy a piece of property and start developing because the infrastructure is just not there. And so I feel like that we're fixing a landlocked canyon with 1-acre lot developments or half-acre lot developments. You know, at some point you just got to, I think the window's fixing to be your prime spot where you want to grow to is fixing to be landlocked to where you can, I mean, you can't unless if your city limits isn't connected to one another.
But we're kind of perpetuating that if we do the $2 million option.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's why I'm interested in, I hope, you know, long term. I mean, I'm in it for the long haul too, on 2 different sides. I'm looking for a quick fix and long haul.
Mark understands why we're speaking globally and individually. I think we can't talk about one without talking about the other. Like Mark understands.
Well, I got on this case because I'm all for development. That's what I do for a living too, and building. Fortunately, we had to face reality, and I've had to come to face reality in the last few years. And the reality of it is, the city doesn't have the want to do it, spend the money, not the votes here spend the money without participation. You know, I vote for doing it. I only want to vote. It ain't gonna work. The reality of it is, as developers, builders, we have to help the city to get this done, or I don't think the votes here do it. That's the reality of the market. I don't like to say that, but
and I think if that is what's on the table, I have to go to my option B, and you continue to have developers landlock you with 1-acre lots, and that's, I mean, just not.
I agree, but without the votes from the city, sure, the commission to expend the expenditure, we have no choice.
I agree. I guess what I am saying is I am willing to talk water rights and talk for your future growth. I mean, to somehow, whatever that looks like, if it's a designated piece of portion of property that helps you to add some kind of value, I mean, I'm open to something. I do have to be careful to a certain extent, or else it doesn't work. If I pitch in to a certain extent, well, I mean, it's gonna either have to go to a PID, to where the people that are moving in there are gonna help pay for it over a longer period of time. But if it's upfront lot cost, the customers won't be able to afford it.
I have included all of the financing options that we could think of as a city, and pros and cons, and some of the more top. Can you move to that agenda item? So I'm going to go to this next agenda here in a second. But I think staff would like to have green light to look at this globally and run a return on investment from our city engineer working on it. We'd like to have that discretion. We do have the money in our budget to run the ROI with the firm, and then we would work with our city engineer to run infrastructure to see what it would take out here globally.
No, could you just ask us, how long did you say that was?
6 months. But like Paul said, does not address Mark's.
Right.
Would like to work with phase one consultant on the other side to help look at, maybe they have some options on this. $2 million, if this comes to fruition, will just be down the drain.
Okay, so, but let's say, give me your timeline. Let's say that we go with the global option. Y'all look at that. We determine that's the direction we want to go, and we want to build that infrastructure out. Again, this is ballpark. How long is it before that tower goes up and he starts able to use that water?
Long, well over a year by the time you get on that day. By the time you do a survey, acquire all the land.
Is that after the 6 months that we research it?
Yeah.
So you're talking 18 months before we even get water out there?
I think the biggest hurdle you can have is land acquisition plan included in these prices, but going in and getting easements and land, I mean, that could kill it and make it unfeasible. But if you have to go out and get all that land, that'll take forever, and then survey, design, and construction.
How long is construction?
That's like 9 to 12 months job to trench through all those areas, because I don't think you can get a trencher through a lot of different trenches. And then take pipe, set it right, and then build a tank, pump station.
So land acquisition, engineering, trenching, construction of the tower, ballpark.
At least 2 years after.
So
I think 15 is
Yeah.
I would think 3 years.
I see people behind you throwing up threes.
It's 3-year job.
You bet.
It takes a while.
That's a product
Yeah, plus-
available even.
and you
Plus,
do
Right now, we don't
plus
have
the
product.
big piece is how do we pay for it? That's where we're at.
And then you still don't have stuff.
Right.
Which is another-
19 million, and that includes only 1,000 connections. The 19 million. You have to get the bigger elevated storage tank to do more connections.
I think a year to build.
So we're talking $19 million for 1,000 connections.
Yeah.
I'm gonna think of
You gotta get
385 of
Then you
them
gotta-
versus $2 million, or whatever those percentage numbers are.
Yeah, for a small hydromatic system. Correct.
Huge difference.
Yeah. But
Per
global
connection cost.
Correct. That's why, I mean, in a perfect world, we would just build it and they will come kind of situation, but it's a lot of risk for the city to take out $30 million to do a full build out.
Yeah.
That's our risk, is the city will.
So we're talking option 1 and option 3. Let's talk about option 2.
The 4 million?
Option 2 would
kind
be to
of
build
just
this,
meet in the middle, isn't it?
tie it in. But then you're spending $2 million or $4 million to serve the 385 connections, and then whatever else chooses to develop, then running further infrastructure to whoever chooses the other stuff.
You still have the same problem. You don't have the sewer to serve it.
Right.
You don't have a sewer.
The difference is, that $2 million investment, after that $2 million, it doesn't prorate after that, right? Because you're stuck. But that $4 million prorates to $8 million, it's cheaper for the next guy.
Yeah.
That's the problem we continue to have, is we piecemeal it to this guy, and then the next guy's like, hey, you did it for this guy, what's the problem? And we keep doing the one at a time.
Right.
And at some point, you're gonna give somebody a grand deal. And that's,
Yeah.
Can I make one comment about that? This doesn't just help me, but this is gonna help Canyon View too, because there's actually someone in this room and multiple people in this room that live in Canyon East and that I've talked to individually that are having pressure issues. So the $4 million deal would help Canyon East.
Yes, on the backside of the district.
So tell me again what the $4 million deal is, explain that.
Go ahead.
So $4 million would be a well boost or a pump station, ground storage tank, and an elevated tank. Kind of like just like what you have in Kimbrough.
You
So
zoom
you'll
in on
have-
that. Thank you.
You'll have that out there, and you serve so many connections based on the size of the I suppose. So it'll be 1,000 connections. And what would then happen is, yeah, he gets his service, but then if this guy wants to buy this piece of land, he now can get his water out there. So now your $4 million would serve another 600 connections.
And the $4 million, option 2
Yeah.
is easier to grow.
Yes.
Is it, so it's like a first step of option 3?
I would never, the way it's going now, I wouldn't build that size water tower. If you build it, you're undersized, you're gonna need a second one before you even know it.
That's what's always been interesting to me, is this, and I've asked you this question, this $4.6 million gets you to that point where you're building that small elevated storage tank, but to build a larger tank to cover a larger area doesn't increase your cost
Yeah, it's not
substantially.
big.
So,
So-
let's say this, here it is. You take care of this, you take care of Marks, and that's the section, you're done.
What's the $4 million?
Yep. 640 acres, typically per tract of land, 620. And so if you do, even if you do 1 acre tracts, that's 600, Marks 385, that's 1,000. So all you've done is done that, that's it for a $4 million project.
If you do half acre lots, you're above your 1,000.
But then you can't, yeah, you can't get any more pressure. You can do, you got land density, what are we doing, 2.7 to 3 per acre? Is that what you're doing these days? For dense?
3.5.
3.5?
Yeah.
I mean, you could do maybe half that.
So the water to feed that $4 million project in that tower, does that come from existing lines plus the well?
It'd be one well, if the water available, I don't know what the water would be like there, I know there's dry stuff out there. But it would be coming from all your other current water supplies.
I'm not as worried about the land acquisition here. Gary, I think Gary would be happy to have it. I just wouldn't build this, I would build it, we'd have to build a better elevated off of that.
Contrast for Ray and I think we're both, I think I kind of understand it, maybe Ray kind of understands it, but, so when you're talking about Plan A, the first one, and the second one, I hear some reluctance in your voice about the first one because of some type of danger or some type of, something goes wrong, it's not gonna work out. So help us understand why 1 versus 2. Not the dollars, just which one's safer, which one's better, for what reasons.
Well, the main problem by having it out there by itself is you don't have enough wells to find it. If this line breaks, then you lost your connection from the water supply. We have the same issue over here at Kim Road. We have all these wells to tie into Kim Road pump station, and one line brings it into town. If that line breaks, you lost half, or I don't know how much of your water supply you lose if you lose the Kim Road line.
2/3.
Yeah, you lose this line, you lose 90% of your water, and so then you lose everybody without water to get that repaired.
That's with option 1.
That's with this pump station. Option 1 here, really, I mean, it's self-contained little water system. The only problem with that one is it's really expensive to serve one purpose, and you can't repurpose a lot of it.
Maintenance expense is high.
Yeah, and then you gotta have to worry about taxes and all that. It's not the most economical option, so it is. Option 2, I think, is a good option with the caveat of there's no redundancy, so you run that risk.
Redundancy, we like to loop in our system, just like a road loop. And Dan and staff have been talking about this for, how long, Dan, looping in this line?
Oh,
God knows how long.
10 years. The $4 million.
No, the 20. The 20 has been on the kitty for a long time, to loop our system, because it, like when all the stuff comes out there in dead ends. And it's better to have it looped in.
So with option 1, he's essentially getting well water, straight well water for his development.
Yeah, you have to have his own little water supply, then you treat it, provide pressure.
I would come out and sit out here and they go.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing out on the left side.
Yeah. And the question was, can the city own that? I think, we don't know, but if they did, does the city want to own that? And then, what do you do if that development, if this project does happen 20 years from now, what do you do with that stuff 20 years from now?
It becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
That doesn't serve a purpose anymore.
So the $4 million, it helps my deal, it fixes Canyon East's problem, existing also allows for some growth, not in a large scale like this, but it does allow.
2/3 more than yours.
Yeah.
And Joe, one of the reasons we came tonight was the fact that we'd spent the money just to do these estimates.
Correct.
And we knew that these estimates were kind of all over the place. And I think what we were looking for from you all is permission to move forward, to work with Mark and see if you want us to continue moving down this road.
That's a good synopsis.
Is
Yes,
that
sir.
right? We just want you to say.
We want to see your interest level, because if you don't want us to look at this at all, we'll drop it. Unfortunately, sorry, Mark.
Do we want to spend more money? Would you like us to spend more money and continue to pursue this?
We're getting tired of doing each time they come, we address it.
Yeah,
We
that
always-
adds up. I have to get authorization every time to do this for each development, and that adds up. If you guys like having to, get a bill for every development, and then if it goes nowhere.
In my mind, that's us trying to be pro-growth,
Yeah.
growth managed, pro-development, in my mind, to try to find solutions to this, because we're running out of options.
Versus Rocky Ridge, where we hit a point where we couldn't move on. There wasn't anything we could do.
It was hard.
Do we know for sure that these are the only 3 options? Because from $4 million to $90 million is a big jump.
We can definitely pull more together, but those are the high-level options, Randy. It's going to be one of those 3. Those can be modified and tweaked a little bit, but...
Yeah, there could be more. I mean, if you want me to keep looking at it and coming up with more, but again, that comes down to if you have permission to my authorized to go do more study, more time.
But philosophically, that's the areas. It's like standalone, extend, or this full meal deal. I mean, so yeah, could there be other tweaks? Yes, I agree. But as far as philosophically, those are the choices. Is that right, Adolfo?
Yes,
Does that make
yeah.
sense?
I mean, you
So
can
this
continue
is-
to build bigger storage tanks and
Yeah,
bigger areas. but
Danny
that's-
wants a bigger water tower. Okay, we can do that or whatever. But
And then all of them have a payment issue. We've got to figure out how to
pay
get there.
That's the biggest thing, is how do we pay for it? We can come up with the solutions and figure that out. How's it going to be paid? So I've got several of those options laid out in the next item for y'all to look at. Hopefully y'all have had a chance to look at that, but we're not geared up for any of that right now, so we're very retroactive. That's what we're hoping for phase 1 of this consultant to help walk us down to get that. So when time comes, like Paul said, if it is going to be a combination of some type of fee with the cities and the developers, that we have that worked out and solidified, so we're not just willy-nilly in this.
So Joe, at this point, you want permission to say continue to move forward with this, and then we need to move to the next item? What?
I would like to hear some flavor from y'all of what you're feeling. If we wanted to do the full Muncie, we're going to have to go for an election, and you're going to have to make the other ratepayers pay for that at this point.
But we can look at the ROI and see.
We can, but we still don't have a financial mechanism set up
Right.
to do assessments, or we could do a PID possibly to do some of it, but then you're still just piecemealing this. You're not getting the big tower and all that.
But y'all know, like Mark, other investors and stuff, is this gonna be a hot commodity in the whole area? If there was water out there?
It would be for me. You take, when I can build 3.5 houses on 1 acre versus, it's I would 10 times rather do that than versus 1 acre. And the half acre deal, I'm not, it works, but it works because it has to grow, and I want Canyon's areas. So I think it's definitely a great option for growth. It's gonna grow. I think that's the biggest question is, it all boils down to is, it's a yes or no vote, do we wanna grow or do we not wanna grow? How to pay for it would be next, but as far as in this meeting, that's kind of what it comes down to.
I don't see it as an either or. I see it as an and. I think we can do both, and I think we can get, I think it's within the realm of possibility to get to his issue quickly, and then look at this. The problem that scares me, and I'm sure it scares some of the city staff, when you look at 3 years down the road, all of this having water, what the heck are we going to do with development? Because it is going to, I I don't know how you manage that.
Same meeting, because we don't know sewer.
Well, yeah, but I think the management of that could be difficult to do.
We would look at the sewer too. We would do the full thing. We would do increasing sewer capacity and then do the water too. We just looked at the water for this scenario. We would look at, Delco would look at sewer. Sorry.
I just think that the question is, when I look at that, the question I have is, can you grow too fast? We look at that area versus that area.
But they're not wanting us to give them options today, we suggest that we want to move forward on exploring it.
The globally versus the individual.
I think we have to look at $4 million option too. I mean, that's 1,000 connections. That's, depending on how many homes a year. If we're saying 100, that's 10 years.
It's 4 million, 1,000 connections.
I mean, Gary, right, there is a possibility that the economy's in tank and nothing. And we've invested $19 million on what we think's going to be.
If we did the 4 million.
Option 2 gets our people at least to kind of see.
1,000 connections is 4,600.
So if we did the 4 million option, not including sewer, it's 4,600 a house.
So what is that, at my 385 would be what?
Well, that's 1,000. We did it all 1,000. So it'd be.
No, I'm saying cost wise. Is that what you're figuring, $4,600?
He's expanding it out to 1,000 lots. Yours would be included in that 1,000.
Basically saying you need only up 5,000 a lot.
Which is almost the exact same thing on the hydromatic. The hydromatic is actually more expensive than each other.
See, Mark, I really think that you think the rate of return on your 385 is just paying tax for eternity. So your 5 needs to go, whatever that rate of return is for 5 years or 6 years, whatever, calculate down with the R2.
Well, but and we've had this debate, that also includes sales tax.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you increase sales tax?
Sales taxes benefit income on you're already up, because we're going to end up with Pack or something out there for sure once you know the drug costs. And so sales taxes be calculated too on this kind of basis too, but that should come off this thing. I think if you look at the value of investment on what he's putting in, just figured up it's going to need 5,000 a lot, but some of that needs to come off. If we contribute to the city.
A lot of this discussion to me goes to the next item.
It's the next item, right?
Probably.
Yes.
I will say one thing about, so we have, can you pull up my layout?
Yeah, you pull back the layout for Mark. Yeah, that one, Mark.
So the two large areas that I have, I mean, I could have 400 and something lots if I make it all residential, but these two, at the moment, I have a steakhouse, and I have a convenience store that I'm talking to, and a hotel.
But you don't have well sites, so we'd have to take away some sites and everything.
Right, well, I'm just saying, as far as tax money coming in, there could be some more options that I could bring to the table. And then one of them is also something that's kind of unique, but it's a bike shop that I've talked to about having something on the way to Powder Canyon for having a bike shop. So it could be businesses that bring in money to help pay for it as well.
We ran the statistics on Madison Park. Madison Park, total
354 houses. That's far.
Anybody?
Sure, this is one more
Bueller?
than you.
Bueller?
That's
Bueller?
that's 350.
Bringing in 76,000 in property taxes
A year.
a year.
That's what we got to do. 5 years, 7 years investment, whatever, the city will kick in, put it in there. So, you credit back on the lot.
We'd have to factor in police, fire, streets, and all that, deduct that from that 76,000 for operational.
I don't know if this is possible, but if there was a private investor that fronted the money, could he be the one that makes the money back off of it somehow?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where the city doesn't benefit it?
That's what the PIDs do, and that's certainly, right, yeah, PIDs do that, and that was what you've seen, yeah. Yeah, you could do that, or you could escrow that money in, and we could build it and do all that.
But PIDs can only pay for the actual infrastructure, they can't continue to make money.
They're annual, so you pay.
Yes,
But
but
once the infrastructure, once it's done, it's over.
Correct.
We don't
That's
continue.
right. Correct, that's correct.
So pretty much, I guess what I'm saying is if there needed to be an outside investor that came in.
And you could do kind of what Paul's saying, you could do a tax increment fund too. Tax increment reinvestment zone, we've not done one of those around here. You could do that too. And I've got that in the infrastructure list. So there's multiple options that we could look at.
Joe, I think I'm hearing that, you know, we move forward to try to study the different options, including trying to figure out, you know,
My impression,
something time-wise.
do we want to look globally too, Commissioners? A big question, rather than just retroactive.
I don't think you have to do either work.
You tell.
I think you can work towards solving this problem and globally at the same time.
To me, option one is really off the table. And y'all don't,
I mean, we don't.
You don't want to own it.
Yeah, that's correct. We
So,
would desire not to have hydromatic.
We're talking about, I mean, it's nice, the $2 million because of the ticket number, but neither one of us want to own it.
Right.
And the $4 million deal helps me, Canyon East, and Future Growth. So to me.
Per connection, the 4 million is about the same.
And that's where we could look at, you know, with Adolfo on build-out options, and then looking at land mass on ROIs. That's kind of what we're talking about. That would take 6 months. And we have talked to the consultant about putting in the sales tax. So I know Cody and I think Paul had mentioned that piece, that sales tax ratio as well.
Because I don't think we're going to get to have it paid for in this meeting, but I guess what I would like to do is just ask for y'all to vote on, can we keep going to the $4 million deal and push in that direction? That's about the only thing, I guess.
I can't disagree with Mark. If I had my choice, I would not do the $2 million. I think, hey, it's a temporary Band-Aid. You know, it's not the way we do our water system.
But Ford does help multiple people.
Yes, Ford does do our contemporary style of water system.
So, say, where we get that $4 million from? Actually, it's not 4, it's 4.6. Where does that come from?
It'll be $5 million.
That's our.
Whatever you borrow money, it's too late to pay for it. You pay for the lot fee, but you pay for the increase in that.
That's our next discussion on the next agenda item.
You put the burden that goes on the specific homeowner buying a house and developer, where it goes on the entire taxpaying population down. So basically, do it all.
Yeah, we can pull those up. You can go to the next option. We can just go on into that. We can jump back to this option, but I've got the financing set up here. Big credit for Dan. Dan helped me with this a lot. Thank you, Dan. Good man.
We tried.
I updated this agenda item quite a bit from our last time. I'm okay with us, if we want to do it the Canyon way. I had a lot of apprehension on working closely with Amarillo. Staff's preference would be to have the same technical specifications with Amarillo. However, we will be talking to the same people when we go through and weigh these financial options that were mentioned. So go on down to the second page. So hopefully y'all got to read this. We put quite a bit of work into some of this to help on the growing side of it, but we'd like to team up with our current contractor, Friesen Nichols Incorporated. They're helping us finish the subdivision regs. They did our comp plan. They would be willing to help us with this, but we want to have good sustainable growth, but not too much growth. Keep going to the next page. So I don't want to read all these, but this is the phase 1 aspect of trying to work with all these and with the consultant. And do get some input from everybody. And I would think, and I think we can also work with them to see if they have any other thoughts on Mark's situation too. If they've seen anything else across the state of Texas on this.
You don't want to give a date, I'll tell you, Mark.
Are we through with that agenda item then?
Yes.
Are we through?
Does it require a vote? Or?
We're going to come back to that. I'd like to finish this item, and I think we can take action on both items, if that's okay. Unless y'all want to take action now on the first item. I figured do it all at the end.
That was the only reason I asked. I just wanted to know.
Let's do it all at the end. So if you'll go on the next page, I've dived into, keep going, don't worry. I've dived into the infrastructure piece of this. And so the first 2 pages of this is how development affects our entire system. Water supply, water pressure, wastewater treatment plant capacity, and lift station capacity. In addition, the road system, the drainage system. Those are the big individuals that are affected every time. Obviously, if Mark brings his system on, portions will be affected. We'll have new distribution lines, we'll have new wastewater collection lines, we'll have new roads. So that's a portion of this. But globally, those other ones that deal with it. Here's the methodologies. If some of you have heard, property tax, sales tax. We've done just a 411 on property taxes. So if you assess property tax to pay this, The rest of the town, myself, everybody that's living in town pays for this. However, to make it work, and what we've done is pretty well, is you gotta keep the tax rate moving forward as the development comes on. If you don't, it'll never be equitable, ever. So, because the way the tax rate, as everybody knows in here, it goes to the revenue value, the bold dollar amount. It goes to that dollar amount each year. You see, first year was 4.38. When we bring in another 100 million in value on it, it drops down to 0.37. So if you don't bring that up with the value, like in example 2, you continue to reduce your tax rate. So it doesn't work if the city commission does not move the property taxes forward, in our opinion. You can see, you leave them the same, and then here, if you brought the 100 million on, let them pay for their share of tax rate, you're increasing that year $438,090. That's an example for 100 million valuation. That's been happening each year. We've had 25 to 30 million in Canyon happening each year coming onto the property rolls. And the commission has been pretty good about trying to keep the same numerical tax rate in doing that. And I have some analysis of the last 5 years of how we've done that that we'll look at during my exuberating, awesome budget presentation that we will see later. But that's, I know, I hope y'all are stoked. So that's how the property tax situation works. Obviously, Commissioner Lyons mentioned we could always borrow and do an election and a vote like we do with the cap. We can always do that. That's what GOs are for that reason. And I don't want to have to read through all this, y'all, but there's some hard truths in there of the equitability of who's paying for that. That's what it all comes back to, the political nature of the equitability. When you do this, you levy taxes on the existing tax base. These people aren't paying for anything, typically, other than the infrastructure in there. So that's GOs and property taxes typically. Revenue bonds, that's what we've been doing most of our borrowing. We borrow against our ratepayers for water, sewer, and solid waste. Not funded by taxpayers, but actually the ratepayers, which are inclusively the taxpayers. Our finance director is very apprehensive about more CO issuance. Mr. Wright, you still with me? So we're about to issue $4 million in debt too for water supply. User fees are directly taking your user fees away from water, sewer, and solid waste on that to use that. Special taxing districts, MUDs, as we talked about, Williams, thank you. We're about to do a MUD on our west side of town. It's a mile from our city limits. So he's about to embark on that. Houston is notorious for having MUDs at city limits, just expanding those MUDs in. So basically they operate as their own municipal utility district. They do run water, sewer, they're a city forming those two. Special improvement districts, PIDs, Mark mentioned that. Greenways has one. I know, Dustin, you've done several, haven't you, with some of their
Greenways, Colonies, Town Square, Air Fuels.
Just some to name a few. It's their own district, and that portion is paying for their area. So, and that can be for parks and other things too. Tax increment financing is one I learned about quite a bit the last few weeks. You can actually do a TIF district around a certain subdivision where all the money and property tax created goes to pay that debt payment. Now, if the city initiates a TIF, we're limited by 30% residential. If the developer initiates a TIF, there is no residential restriction, which is weird. I did not know that. So, I was talking to Andrew Freeman at Amarillo. San Marcos has done that a couple of times. Those are 25, 30-year payouts on those. Last but not least, private exactions are our word of the day, impact fees. Or you can do pro rata fees in there too, the proportionality. However, pro rata fees don't take care of water towers, wastewater plants, and things like that. They typically are for lift station, a water main, and a sewer main, or sewer trunk. Fortunately, they don't take care of the big ticket items. So those are kind of the ones that we've come up with that we can do. We'd like to team up with Freeze and Nichols to look at that further.
And that would be them coming in, meeting with developers, meeting with builders, discussing those items, going through the pros and cons of all of those type things, right there?
Correct. Yep. Going through all those, talking about their experience across the state of Texas. We're not the only ones being impacted by this situation. A lot of other cities are growing at a lot faster rate that are getting hit hard with this situation. So they've got a lot of experience with these. You know, these are pretty much all the options that we could find and bring to the table at this point. But at this point, there's no mechanism other than property tax rates increase, going out for GOs, COs, if our finance director is comfortable with those at this point. So we're about to do pro rata fees, but that still doesn't take care of the water tower. That doesn't fix that situation. We would like to move forward with phase one to look at financial sustainability for development purposes. That's what we'd like.
So the consultants would look at all these options and see what
Yes.
best for us.
We've talked a little bit with F&I on that. They have experience talking with cities. Most fast growths are going with number 8. It's not uncommon that that's number 8. We would ask them to come in with an open mind, Paul.
They don't have it.
All of them?
Your word. But I told Joe I'm not going to oppose the amendment. He likes meetings. I like the decision to move forward. He likes meetings. This is fine. It's great the way he operates. I told him I'm not going to oppose it. If you guys want to do it, do it. When it comes with impact fees, I will fight them because I think the decision should not. First of all, I don't follow the premises that it's a burden on all taxpayers. I don't do development. It's not a burden on all taxpayers. It's a benefit, in my opinion. I don't go with that premises that they start off with. I don't immediately assume that. Second thing is that you take the decision of the impact fees, you go from the developers don't have the decision no more, it goes to the city and the bureaucrats, so they can have the rates and all that as they need it, and you kind of lose your power. I think the decision needs to stay with the business people. Make a decision on the development, they're going to put in X amount of money, they need to make that decision and work that out. So, I mean, if y'all want to do it, study it, it's fine, because it'll be good information. So I'm not going to stand in your way and y'all do whatever you want.
Are you included on those bureaucrats?
I guess.
I think by definition, an elected official can't be a bureaucrat.
There you go.
But maybe I'm looking at.
Staff is ready for a decision, but we want to go through the motions to do what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I could make a decision right now, but I don't get that kind of motion.
You know, to me, I think, no option's painless. You know, nobody wants to pay for it. Developers don't want to pay for it. Taxpayers don't really want to pay for it either if you go out to them. So I think, you know, there's a handful of different options here that I think it makes sense to study. For the long term, we need to know strategically what are the best options. It may not just be one, Paul. It may not just be impact fee. I mean, it may be PIT, or, you know, do you have taxpayers pay for a percentage? I think there's a lot of different things that have to be studied in the mix, but somehow to where it's not when the developer comes in and says, you know, we've gone down the road and said, okay, we're going to pay for them out of reserves. Well, you know, that was past taxpayers that saved up money, and so we pay for it. We don't have that option anymore. And if you know, we really don't have a good option for debt without figuring out some of this. Bottom line, I would like to hear back from somebody, whether it's Breeze and Nichols, or, you know, I think we need the right folks to inform us what are the benefits of the different options, what are all the different options, and at the end of the day, it still may not be an easy decision. I mean, you know, we still got to figure out.
It seemed like to me we're going to have to explore these other options before development stops.
That's almost what I'm hearing. I mean, we don't have the money to issue the COs, so
We're running out of system capacity. There's not many more places. The best places, where's that map? Where's that future map? Yeah.
It's funny how close.
Yeah.
I didn't know that map was.
You were digging around
The best place to develop today is here. That's about it. How does your That's shovel ready with water and no water pressure or supply issues. Peanut gallery. So that's what it is. Water supply issues, you know, we're having lift station issues here. We could probably do a little bit here. But other than that, and B's kind of here. Could do this, but we can only do water. Sewer is way too far on this one. From my vantage point, as much as I'd love to run sewer over here, I just don't think it's cost effective.
And B, we have some water options in our land.
Yeah, I think so. I think we can do it. I mean, we could easily get from here to there.
But no sewer.
Yeah, sewer is the hard part. You're supposed to grow towards the plant. It's down this way.
Closer to half.
Yeah, you're supposed to grow that way. Cody, did you have a question?
Don't know. I have a lot of words, but I don't know how to put them out.
Can I interject? Maybe I think what I hear Cody saying is the comment doesn't have to be an either or, basically meaning, can we look at the big picture, but the $4 million to get more surf is phase one? Can we build the $4 million option and not, as we expand, we're not losing the use of that like we are on the $2 million option? Is that kind of that's what I'm hearing you say?
I think so, and here's my other concern, and this really goes more back to the other agenda item, but we combined them, so I guess we can speak about them both. I'm thankful for this. I'm glad y'all looked at this. This is good, but this is not what our citizens asked us to do. This is not. We did a comprehensive plan. This is what our citizens asked us to do. And yeah, they look similar, but they're not even close. This is Washington right here. This is where our citizens, well, and they're using our ETJ, and I get that. That's Washington right here. That's a lot of land, and I get that. Lots of dollar signs right there makes a lot of people real excited. But I don't think that's what we really need to address this issue right here, more than we need to really be concerned about what we're referring to as globally, because that's not even in, I mean, that would be.
That's the full Monty.
That is the full Monty. So I don't think you compare $19 million, which isn't $19 million. We've already discussed that it's actually more for the tower.
Right.
Plus, if you put water in, you're doing sewer, so it's really $45 to $50 million.
Putting a tower here opens this whole area. So this whole area is addressed by that. You just don't have enough, you can't serve enough connections for this area.
But I don't think that's, I mean, we've.
And we're okay with that, Cody. We wanted to show you big picture.
For sure.
And small picture and.
But $4 million, $4.6 million addresses this issue, and a little more.
What happens when the next Mark Hughes comes to see us? And he's not over there.
$4 million right here?
What if he's over here, over there? You know?
Okay, ballpark, tell me when that happens. How long is it, Mark, how long is it going to take before we fill this? Paul, how long is it going to take before we fill this?
3 years, but the bill is.
No, I'm talking about this. We max capacity of this tower right here.
Well, that whole side.
1,000 houses.
10 years.
10 years.
So we're trying to solve a problem 10 years from down the road from today?
But I like the individual company, and I don't like one deal fits all. I like to see, I think it's best for us to make decisions. Somebody comes over here, doesn't work, it doesn't work.
I just don't like having to do the hydromatic solution every time, Paul.
No, I don't either. I like the 4.6 million.
And I'm good with that, Cody. If we want to move this direction, I think the staff's on board with that.
I don't need a study to tell me what to do. I know what I do.
I'm not sure what the study tells us, like down here. Like, I don't know that that's a pressing issue today.
But we can localize the scope of this area, Cody. We can change that scope.
I don't know what you're studying, and we already know what that is.
Yeah.
I think we've got to study it to figure out, because there are a lot of options to pay for it, and we don't have one option that we say is viable right now. So, I mean, we may come up
Why
with
do we
an
not
answer.
have one option that's viable? Why couldn't we not go out?
I don't think we're educated enough to say, okay, are PITs better, or impact fees better, or is there an amount that you'd ask the taxpayers to pay for?
I'm educated enough.
Paul, you also come from, definitely over.
It's called bias.
It's called bias.
Nothing personally, but, and I think you've got a group that wants to know how we grow, but I think it makes sense to study to figure, what different options.
I asked the development team, they think this is the area we should focus on, out of all the areas.
What do you,
Because it's the-
what do you
because
think we should focus on?
I'm not gonna tell you.
Can I say one thing? I have a possible chance right now to buy 304 acres, and I'm just gonna say it in A. At 304 acres would be 900 homes that I could potentially, in the future,
So what
be-
you're saying is you're just fixing to double how much you're gonna help us with this.
I'm just saying, I haven't.
That's what I heard you say.
But there is gonna be a piece of property that possibly could be bought in that A. And what someone pays for that, and if it works, is all gonna be determined on, you know, if it's 1 acre deals, it doesn't work.
There's no question, that A is gonna be the growth in this deal. These are the two areas that are gonna grow for the next 5 to 10 years. There's not anywhere else that's gonna do it, because this here is pretty well, kind of set up to go, and that's set up to go. It's just gonna take a few $1 million to give them what you want to see grow in two areas. They're gonna grow in the next 10 years if we help them. If we don't, then they're just not gonna grow. It's pretty simple.
Cody,
It's simple, it's
when
pretty
you said
simple.
study, were you just referring to the ROI, not the payment methods? I mean,
No, I have no opposition to studying the payment methods as
Okay.
long as it's done objectively.
Yeah, and
We can get 1,000 different, we all work in the business. We know we can go get a firm to tell us exactly what we want to hear.
Right.
Please, for God's sake, don't do that. Because it's just going to get voted down. I mean, it is. It's just if we see through it, it's just going to go down. It's a waste of money. So come and bring it to us legitimately. I think it's probably going to be a portion of, you know, the developers are going to have to start paying some. I think there's going to be a large portion that's going to be on taxpayers, and I think that's okay. I think this happens incrementally throughout all of the development in all of Canyon.
it's how the world got built.
It is how the world got built, and I don't necessarily always buy into that we don't have any more room for debt because the.
No, I don't mind that.
I mean, I don't think that's why our rating went down at all. I think we've talked about that. I think everybody's ratings went down, and so we talked about that. So I think we can go out. I think we can go to the taxpayers and say, y'all want to grow. But more importantly, I was a part of that comprehensive plan, and we sat and did this right here.
I agree with you.
And we talked about this. And so if we go to the taxpayers, let's say we go to the taxpayers in 9 months and say, you know what, we decided we're going to go here.
We're gonna go massive.
Well, what about brick streets? What about the courthouse? What about all these other things? What about inside the city? There's no way we can do that. That's just not, it doesn't even seem feasible. I think it would be great for developers, and I'm not saying it would be bad for our city, but I'm not sure that's what, we can't develop a plan and then come up with hey, this would be a good idea because it'll help everybody else.
I was just trying to clarify your.
For sure, no, for sure.
And so it really is the ROI of the big area that you had concerns
Yeah.
about.
But us as a commission, we ain't gonna be here in 10 years' time. A and D are the two areas that we're gonna have an impact on if we want to. If we don't, we don't. But that's the two areas that Mark's exactly right. That's gonna grow good out there. There's builders want to go in there right now. Builders want to go in here right now. So that's two areas that we can have an impact on if we want. And it's gonna take, as you said, a partnership, I think, with the city and everybody. If you wanna study it, that's fine. That's what we need to focus on, into A and D. Get it done. So the longer you wait, the longer they get tired of sitting around. Chris, you've been waiting for years and years and years. We ain't made a penny off of it yet. You know, he waited for years and years and years. He gonna get sick of waiting.
We still love you, Paul.
I know it. I still love you guys, but that's the two areas that we can have an impact on. That's fine, guys.
I can't disagree with Paul's analysis. A and D seem to be the most appetizing. C's already done, B's what it is.
I've never been afraid of looking at all those options. That doesn't scare me.
I think I'm good. I think we're good. We just need a decision made, guys, to move forward. If you don't want to study, that's great, and you just make a decision and move forward, we're good with that. We just thought you wanted to dig into it. Sorry, Gary, I used your term.
I told you I appreciate you bringing me in and showing me all that. I really did. It's very helpful. So.
Yeah, they look lovely with the second agenda item being the, how do you fund it? If you pick this one, you know, this is where you want to grow, so you want to spend the money there, but somebody might land over here and you decide, I don't want to grow there, then.
The staff needs to know, hey, I'm sorry, the city's not growing that way.
Finish your thought. What were you
So
fixing to say?
then-
Somebody bought something here and we want to grow there, well, we can, but our priority for us, I think, is A and D. If they just come to something, it's no decision.
Right.
We're gonna have to look at it.
If you look at it globally, then you would apply the same rules there as you would here.
Yeah, I don't wanna do that.
Or do you want to have it set up, do a study to find out what works here, what works there, what works there. That way, you don't have to make a decision it's different every single time.
I mean, you wasted
I don't
all
know.
the comprehensive plan.
Right, and so,
I mean,
that's
they
kind
told us
of what
what
we
to
look at
do.
it, is if you look at it globally, and there's a study done on how to assess, how to help the areas you want to go there, you help these developments, and if this one comes over here, do you then apply different set of rules to them? I think that's kind of, as far as how you're going to fund it, or if you're going to fund it, I think that's kind of. what the
Well,
second
we're
part
already
is.
applying a different set of rules to him.
Yeah, because right now.
Because
we're
I don't know of
doing each
anybody
one
that's had to pay
individually.
for their own water.
Right now, it's individually, that's, I mean, that's fine, that's how you want to do it.
In any way, shape, or form.
We have had developers in the past that have helped pay for some of the construction.
That happened one time.
This time.
But what about the
over.
last 4 developments?
No, you're right, but we
So-
did talk about that we were gonna have them, and then at the end of the day, we got a good bid on, the wastewater and lift station, and so the recommendation was to pay for it out of reserves, and that wasn't, we discussed earlier on before that, we discussed the possibilities of developers also participating. So it hasn't been that we haven't, that hadn't been part of the plan or what we've done with that, so.
Just your comprehensive plan is what made me go buy that property.
And that's why we do them. So that everybody on the same playing field. And I think they're so important. We spend a lot of time doing that, and I think our citizens, I mean, there's a lot of things we haven't even really addressed in that comprehensive plan. But, I mean, I think when you say, hey, this is where we want to go.
Disagree with you. This was adopted in 18. That's done, and this is nearly complete.
Not related to development.
Oh, sorry. I evidently.
I think there's some brick streets that are right in here,
Stop
and there's a courthouse about right. I think it's right there.
We disannexed the middle of town.
Yeah, I bet you did.
So the county now, they're responsible. So, let's wrap this up, y'all. Do you want us to study this area and what it's gonna take for this green area to do water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure?
So we're back on the original agenda?
Yep. It seems to be what the underlying theme is do it this way.
But the agenda item is speaking specifically to his development, not all of it.
That's correct.
I would like to, if it could be separate, I would like to, what I'm bringing to the table at least be to help what I'm doing with the, I know I keep saying this, but with it also helping you grow and and myself. Because you already have the city sewer there.
But if we're looking at $4 million option, it really does kind of encompass a big part of it.
That's what I've heard. 4 million has been more close. My goal would be that we get the tower and tank enough to take just that acreage in it. But that's good news. Probably what we think. That's section of land, maybe probably another 1,000 sections, maybe 2. So each side of the water tower and all that just for this. It's still gonna take time. None of this is fast. That's where Paul is 100% right. That's what, I guess, we want to move fast too.
And honestly, in reality, I think there's only about 500 acres, 700 acres that's going to be bought on that, that's even reality of being bought.
And I know Gary's, we've had a lot of great conversations with Gary Coleman on this. I don't know what his future is on this. I know they're willing to retire, but who knows who's going to come on next. I'm sure Gary would help us on the land piece. So, is that what I'm hearing? Move forward with this?
Move forward with the study to look at that?
Get him to get the engineering of what it take for water and sewer to serve this. Because the 4 million is gonna serve more than March, it's gonna serve another 500.
Sure, you want to serve everything, you want to cite everything.
But I don't need sewer.
Get you on Washington Cody, is that what you're saying?
No,
The only decision
I wanna,
to pull the trigger to get markets developed as fast as we can is the hydromatic option. That is the fastest selection.
the agenda item.
Or just the
None of us
water.
want that.
Right. The 4 million, and the 4 million has to come back on the table.
The agenda item is to give water and sewer main connections to him, but he doesn't need sewer. So we're just saying yes or no to the $4 million, $4.6 million to service his needs.
For us to
Agenda item
continue
number 8.
for us to continue to study that, sir.
No, that's not what it says.
I think that's the intent, is to try to study it.
Let us come back to you.
Because I thought the study had already been done with having to bring that $4 million
Yeah, but it doesn't take care of this whole area. It only
No, we're not talking about that whole area. We're talking about just
I know,
this agenda
but
item.
you brought up the whole area.
Right, I'm not,
Why would we build $4 million, build an undersized tower? That's my question right here. Wouldn't be worth it. Would be bad planning.
I'm just saying what the agenda item says.
Globally and individually. I'm all for that, but, you know, if we're leaning towards that option, the $4 million option, it doesn't go up that much having a bigger elevated tank. We can look at that. If we did $4 million for this, to take his, and then maybe some of this.
But most of that's not developable, right? Because this is all, there's already current housing
Here's
all
some.
right here.
Yeah.
Because it's wind free right there.
You got some of this here, but then you got some Gary pulls, and there's a break in there somewhere. Is that break gonna have an issue?
No.
Okay.
So is the $4 million water tower that's not on my property, then that would be somewhere else?
Yes.
That would be
Yeah, it'd be on.
So you don't really know if that's possible, because you don't own the land.
Right, that's correct.
That's what it is. That is display. Something that big. So can that $4 million option be scaled down to fix my problem and Canyon Ace's problem, and
It can, but I don't know that that'd be the best investment for the city. That's why we studied, yeah, like they wanted, like the agenda item is for your property, but I think for the city, it's gotta be a good investment. So we also gotta look at the sewer, whether you need it or not, and how much more we can serve.
$385, that's a pretty big investment for the city, plus fix an existing problem we got. To me, that's a pretty good, substantial, I mean, it would be the same or a little bit bigger of the biggest development in Canyon that's ever happened, if commercial is included into it. It's a pretty, to me, it's.
And the feasibility study would need to be completed in order to determine his level of participation.
Was the Canyon East, problem already being explored? Another route, or no?
Just looking at it a little bit. Dan, have we done anything on the pressure issues on that far street at all? Has there been any major complaints over there?
No. Have we done anything? No. Complaints, I'm unaware of very many.
Chris? I'm aware of my hair.
We haven't had any complaints on pressure.
It would become a problem if we serve the huge property and taking that water back so that's, because they're at the limit, so they any more than they'll have an issue.
Because my other option C was to how much can you give me? Can I just, do I need to cut this thing in half and have curb and gutter on half of it, and I did 1 acre on the rest of it? So I mean, that's something that I would, you know, I'd ask in our last meeting that we had, is like, is there anything available for me?
It's gonna be very small. Very small.
But small may have to be big for me, if I already own the land.
Right. It's also that. Can you serve anything?
I have to see, because part of it's in the pressure lane, but I don't know how much that will affect communities and then water availability.
And we get into that landlocked problem again, if you start.
Yeah, well, I mean, he could, you know, we could just annex this part, he could build up there and it's landlocked. There's nowhere to go. Other than this side maybe.
No, we need to avoid that.
Landlocked to the north, so let's get to that way, so. What's your poison?
I guess what I'm requesting is, can y'all vote to see if the dog bowl can look into how much can he serve me, even if it's not all of it, how much can he serve me, half of it, can he serve me a quarter of it? And then also, what would it take to build just a very small, whatever the water tower size is, to fix my problem and Canyon's future problem if you give me more water. And that's really.
Probably 4 million, 4.6 is probably the minimum.
I guess, and then how we pay for it's probably another meeting, another conversation.
See how do we go down the road on this?
Yeah,
just timing wise is tough. It'd be nice if consultants could give us an answer in 30 days and pay for it. So I think that's a challenge too. And what I'm hearing too, I think from Joe, is if we're thinking the $4 million is the best alternative to serve that area in the strategic plan, but is it really better to upsize the water tower? And so that's part of the question in the study too, is what I'm hearing. So, but then the how do you pay for it piece, how do we come up with that answer? I think the other road we need to go down, but it'd be good to have that answer quicker.
A lot of different views on commission on this topic. Looking at you, Paul.
Just for my pea brain, I would love for us just to address 8 and move on to 9, because it seems like we're combining the conversation.
So 8 is presentation of request.
Right.
But I think we all kind of know what direction we want to go, just the funding part.
We just need authority to move forward with Adolfo and study the area you want us to study. And you've been real specific. Well, I think the 19's fallen out. I think the 2 million's fallen out. You've told us you want the 4. You told us that you want us to be able to expand it to a degree. We told you we need a slightly larger water tower. I mean, Joe, that's given us much more direction than we had prior to this meeting. Is that what y'all want to do?
Would you like it in the form of a motion?
And I think city staff would ask that the study would include the possibility of larger water tower. So
I would like it to serve.
I mean,
and maybe look at both. So maybe it is existing that would just do what we're doing right now.
It wouldn't take much.
What does the larger water tower cost?
It would not take much from Adolfo to find that out. From one water tower side, one ground storage to another, it's pretty close. Would you agree?
Have some kind of a timeline on what it takes to do something like that?
It's a good number.
Just from my perspective, to know where I'm at, because if you're telling me it's a year, then it's different for me.
It's not that long.
No, you give me a week, I can come up with a, so what it would serve and what it would cost to do
Water and sewer. Do I have an amen?
Are you ready for this?
Well, so y'all get from my perspective, but the reason to put the options together that I did is there's like 3 rules of the jury. Is it safe, is it going to work, and then can they pay for it? So is it safe, are you going to keep the pressure, is it going to work? Let's take care of those two items. Are you going to pay for it? Is it the reason I didn't put sewer or line efficiency? I don't know. So that's why I need the authorization to. So I'm just taking run with it, come up with a million options. I need to know that it's going to be what I propose is going to work. Yeah, I just need to know what direction y'all want me to go with it, that y'all feel comfortable that you can pay for. Because, like I said, otherwise that's why Joe had me go from $2 million to the $19 million option, because that's the scope he told me. Give me this, give me that. If y'all both give me a direction on that, that's where I'll go.
Can I say one more thing, and then I'll be done? Is I own the property and I'm ready to develop. So it has to be looked at, to me, it has to be separate than adding the sewer and big plan in it, because you don't even have the piece of property yet. You don't know. I mean, saying Gary Wood, every time I've talked to him, he'd say, I'm done. So I don't know for sure if he's would be all in on that or not, but you don't have that property yet. You don't have
Correct.
someone coming to the table to grow there yet. I'm here and ready to break ground, so I would like to have it looked at also, just to bring what I can bring to the table for today's pretty large growth of Canyon situation.
Fantastic.
I think 20 years ago, the city made investment to go out back 27 Canyon East.
Correct.
For 20, 25 years, we were there.
Right.
They made an investment. To make that investment to go out.
And in 2000, when did Dwight say that he needs to have a taller water tower there in that plan, or in those minutes? 2018, Dwight brought it up in some minutes that we went back on and looked at, is that he brought up, we need a new water tower right there.
I think it's in the water study.
Yeah.
It's in our study.
It's in there.
It is in our water supply studies, it's supply or distribution. It's in our water distribution study to do that.
So we've already studied it?
Well, some of it, just on a
That's why I
very
told
high
you
level.
you need to.
You know, is this the $19 million line too?
Yeah.
It's just
We've
something,
studied all that.
it's a good idea.
So do you have a motion that works?
I'm trying. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion based on the city engineer's presentation that we explore both the option of meeting the needs currently of 1,000 and meeting the needs of whatever the capacity that the city staff feels like will be sufficient. Additionally, to meet the area based on the comprehensive plan and bring that back to us for the next meeting so that we can make a decision, look at funding issues.
Have a motion second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. All right.
We'd like to move forward on funding options globally. On agenda item.
Yeah, do we need, what that agenda item is?
Item 9, please.
Okay, item 9 then is consider and take appropriate action on professional services for the City of Kenya Partnership for Development Progress Funding Study and Engineering Studies System. So, Joe, do you want to, I mean, we talked about it.
Yeah, I've already gone over everything.
It's,
These are the shortfalls that we're having financially, Alpha and Dan and I and all of us can bring you the solutions, from small, big to large. But it comes back to how do we pay for it, and I think it's that time to how we continue to pay for these things. The only real thing we've been doing is paying for things out of cash reserves, and that's what we did with the Jacobson property and did the Fuller property. We paid for that. Dan with ballpark figures, lift station on the golf course, and Jacobson was that.
You're approaching $7 million for all that.
Which allowed the growth of Spring Canyon and Track D that we looked at. Where Rock Rose, Crestview, and Gerald property is. So that's what we've done in the past. We've not, our city's been very conservative on debt, on city debt and taxes. The only one I know in the last 30 years has been the cap, unless somebody can beat that.
Water.
Water also.
But not tax supported. We've only done one tax supported. We've been very much a CO type city, which a lot of cities are. I'm just showing that that's been our past experience as a city. So, we would like to study those options moving forward.
What's going to be your framework for picking the professional services?
We're just going to amend our contract with Freeze. I had at least 2 members of the commission say, being that they've worked with us so much, we'd like to continue that. But if we want to choose something different, we're open to it. But they're doing our downtown plan, doing our comp plan, and they're helping us with subdivision regulation and zoning, which is development. That was our rationale. They've been working with us.
Have they given you a timeline on when they can complete that?
With their approval, Joe, we'll get a scope and we'll get a scope and a contract. They would not do that until we had approval from you all to move forward.
Ballpark.
They were waiting on a scope.
Yeah,
she hadn't told me
Is that
yet.
2 months or 5 years?
We can get it pretty quick. We can get a scope pretty quick and back to you.
They'll do that.
I could probably even get it back by next week. But I don't know how long that'll take.
And then it's setting up meetings. It's getting people like Mark and people like Paul to come to some meetings and talk about construction and where they're going and those kind of things.
It's a long, tedious process.
City of Amarillo's going through the same process, and they're saying 18 months.
So is it staff's recommendation that we don't use any other funds from the city before we finish that plan?
That's hard, because it goes back to what Paul said, we're stopping everything to do that. That's hard. Basically, when the developers come to the door, I'm saying, I'm sorry, we're closed. Unfortunately, I don't know if we want that option. That's kind of where we're at now, we're tapped out, and so I don't want to limit us by that. But honestly, we're already limited just by the way that it's so. Does that make sense? I don't know if that explains it. What, is that ideal? Yes. 18 months is a long time. And we move faster than everyone, just so you know.
Exactly. Our ship moves much quicker.
Much quicker. Our ship may outpace their ship.
Our meetings are small. mean, when we call developers, we don't have a room full of people.
Dustin and I talk at least once or twice a week, as he does with Dan and the rest of the team, and I talk to Lucas and the other developers, you know, and I'm listening to them, but short of that taking, it just takes time. So, like what you heard Mark say over and over again, I don't have it. Unfortunately, you know, and Mark came and saw us, and some of these, you know, Ty, in his example, Rocky Ridge didn't come see us, didn't do us homework. And there is a lot on this, is buyer beware. And that's the hard truth of some of this on that side, is buyer beware.
All my risk that I laid on the table was because I felt like your comprehensive plan, that there was no way it could be turned down. And because I tried to beat every one of your requests.
If we had the infrastructure, this would be a go from the staff side. Without a doubt. All of us are on board with it, but it just, you know, the reality is there's not infrastructure. It would be a go if the infrastructure was there, from what Mark has presented. I know it can do it very much. I'm glad you're still with me.
So back to the question at hand on the study. Thoughts or motion or?
My thoughts, we're gonna have to do something. We're out of money. And if we wanna continue to grow, if we wanna continue development, money's gonna have to come from somewhere. We gotta figure that out. Before we stop. I feel like it's black or white. And I think we need a study to help us figure that out. That's my opinion.
We're more than happy to ask Jeff and I if they have any thoughts on this scenario too.
Say that again.
We're Freezing Nichols. We're more than happy to ask their thoughts on this situation. If they could offer any suggestions to help staff.
Prior to the study being finalized, where we.
Yeah, if we get phase one moving, we could ask them, hey, you know, we got this situation. What can we do? This is what the commission's leaning towards. You know, what's your thoughts? What can we do? What are our options? What are our definitive options? It's going to be one of those 8.
And obviously, we're going to continue to work with Mark. And so at some point, we're going to come forward with these other costs because you've asked us to do that. So you're obviously going to have other opportunities to address that. And whether you choose to wait or not is going to be your decision at that point.
Correct. Well, we've got the 8 options on that list. You know, we can just pick one and go. That's always an option too. If you want to go for a tax election, you can go right now. Staff's opinion does differ from Commissioner Lyons, as much as we love him on what we think the solutions are, but it is an option. We can raise property taxes next year to pay for all of it. There's a lot, we could do anything on that list.
You can't raise property taxes enough to pay for all this.
If you go to an election, you would.
Well, right. There's a difference between what you just said.
Yeah. So, I can't imagine there's, but yes, we could pull the trigger on any of those options right now and do it, if you wanted to do that.
Put us a committee together and we'll study it.
Then you'll have another committee study, the committee study.
Well, it's what Gary said earlier. I don't know that we're educated enough.
All it is. Well, I think we want to move forward with something, so do we want to do a study or do we not?
I'll be honest, my heartache about the study is that you have developer after developer after developer come in, and they kind of have things handed to them, and they kind of have smooth and no rocks, and here comes Mark Hughes, and we go, okay, cool. Thanks for coming. We're going to study this for 18 months. See you in 18 months. We'll come up with a funding option for you.
But is the financial situation not different than it was in the past?
I don't believe so. I'd have to. Somebody would have to explain to me why our financial situation is different today than it is.
We chose to do the water line and the water tower on Canyon Board out of cash. And we did that $7 million project in 2015. Which Jacobson? What year?
3.5. They were both, the water and sewer both, about $3.5 million each.
3.5 for Jacobson was out of cash reserves. John, you were on the commission then?
$7 million came out of reserves to both those projects.
And we did that, and all cash.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, Kelsey. I think the financial situation is exactly different.
made
than what it was
How
in
is,
the past.
how is the financial
We
situation?
made $4 million last year.
We had money to pull out of reserves to do it, and now we're gonna have.
We made $4 million last year. Our total reserves right now are 5.2.
We have 5.2 in cash.
So you would take us down to, I mean, we spent the money, but we're making money. It takes down to 1 million. That's that accounting. You said we made $4 million last year.
I think we made $4 million.
What do you know?
No, we didn't.
I asked him, but he gave you all the.
I think that was right off. We can look that up. I don't have it available right now, but I'd be happy to.
We made money last year, it was several million.
That went to debt payments.
It's not all cash. We don't, like, 5 million is what we have in cash in this financial statement, not to give.
Some of that is in assets that we obtained from development too. Because those are liabilities.
Yes, I should report it.
It's not, we didn't make it in cash. Joe, will you follow up and we'll get all this on that?
Yes, 100%.
We will, we'll get, Mr. Wright will track that down, sir.
You know, I think to really be well educated on, to make decisions of what are the viable options, I think we need to go down a road, you know, like this, and I think this is one, is a good road to go down. I agree, I would like to have, if there's a possibility, and Joe threw out, maybe Freeze and Nichols could come up with options in this scenario that's not a 18-month deal. Yeah, I think we need to see if that's not feasible, or else, yeah, it probably kills it for Mark.
Or you gotta come into it that Mark's just not a part of this situation. We have to do something now while we work on the rest of it. That's all.
It could be a pro rata deal right now. You know, what do we think the city taxpayers would be willing to, you know, what could we fit into next year's budget and, you know, debt service, or, I mean, those are the kind of solutions that we'd have to come up with, so.
And see what kind of income is this gonna produce?
Right.
We just think, like Gary and several have said, the due diligence of that, but we also have the apprehension of what Cody said. So we don't disagree with any of the comments you make. We just have to make a decision. Unfortunately, that decision falls on the top of the law.
I think it's confusing on what the.
Mr. Hughes, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're on agenda item 9 right now.
Okay.
Not 8.
Okay. So the thing is, what we need to figure out is where we move next. Do we do our homework or due diligence, go through the motions with a consultant, probably Freeze and Nichols, to get a solution? So when this does, when these types of developers come to us, okay, this is what it's gonna be. You're gonna have to pay this, or the city's gonna have to do this. Oh, we're not growing over there, we're growing here. So we're putting all our eggs in this basket. You know, if somebody comes and says, oh, I'm gonna go over here, I'm sorry, the city of Keene is not really interested in that right now. It's not in our plan. Our eggs aren't in that basket, they're in this basket. That's where we're at. Our eggs are in this basket right now. The north is the primary one now.
And other things are like fair to you, like black and white, because of your law enforcement, but sometimes finances aren't there, or they look different in a different spot than they do in another spot. I understand the fairness, but sometimes the money come out and how you get the money to make it fair.
So, based on the comprehensive plan, are there areas that would require investment from the city other than A?
Yes. F, going on the south side of town.
Okay.
And E on that far side, the one off of 47. No, Highway 60.
But it's the city's opinion, the city staff's opinion, that A is the area we need to be growing in. I'm looking at you.
Which is A? That's okay.
East.
I think it's A and B, Joe.
B's kind of taken care of.
Yeah, I agree. The thing that worries me about A at the present is the water supply issue.
So do we shorten the time that Freeze and Knuckles has to study if we ask them to study A?
Instead of the big picture, just
You're looking at something totally different there, though. I mean, you're looking at one guy, a small development. How's he gonna?
Not one guy.
How's he gonna do? Well,
A is,
you're looking at
he's
A. But we
maybe
would
a
want a
20th
global.
of A.
It's whatever your solution is for A, that's gonna be your solution for everywhere. I believe, don't you?
I think
Joe?
for even future years.
They're gonna
I
say,
think so.
whatever you do, this is the best, this is some suggestions that we have for you to fund wherever you grow.
I think
It's not gonna
that's
be,
fine.
they're not gonna treat them as separate, entities.
But we just asked them, we just talked about asking them to look at this situation and see if they could give us
Yes, but-
an expedited opinion.
Yes.
To do all of A, though, there's gonna be other pieces, the sewer pieces, there are other stuff to it, so.
There will be similarities to that.
And that's not a study, that's their opinion.
For sure. Okay. Just trying to throw some options in.
And I think that.
Somebody will make a motion.
And I think we're gonna, I mean, you've tasked us, we're gonna be talking with Mark a lot, okay? He's put some things on the table tonight, we're gonna be able to talk with him, we're gonna be able to continue to work with him.
Thanks for that, because that's my fear.
You haven't told us no, okay? And so, and again, on the phone, I called him the poster child, because he just came up at the wrong time, because we have this study coming.
Or the right time.
It's one way or the other, depending on how you look at it, correct? And so, let us continue to work with him. You may make Joe, they may make a decision outside of our study, and we understand that.
Yeah.
But at least we know what kind of conversations to have with him now,
That's what
so
I
that
said.
we don't come back here and you say, no. Because then we've wasted Mark's time and our time. We know which way you want to go.
They, you know, if you want it fast, going out for death is gonna be the fastest. I can pretty much tell you that. But hypothetically, if we do Paul's favorite thing of impact fees, it takes a lot of time to do that. It's a very statutorily structured process that we have to wait.
Another study.
We have to study other things, we have to make it equitable.
12 to 18
The legislator
months.
did not make that an easy option. We'll get you. But,
It's Cody, you want to empty market move forward right now. He puts in X amount, see what the next amount, we can bid, we have to raise taxes, let's do it, just go with payment. That's what it will.
Well, that's not a discussion for number 9.
No, it's not, but I'm just saying if that's what you want.
Yeah, I don't want number 9 to make,
I think we
not
should-
just Mark, but any developer feel like we're shutting down for 18 months until we figure this out. Because even at 18 months, it's going to take us another year to implement it.
So we're gonna have to do it at the same time. We're gonna have to do it at the same time. That's why we got them both together. We're gonna have to do both at the same time, and staff is ready to do that. We're ready to tackle the options.
I make a motion to we issue a directive to implement phase 1 to create a development-focused, solutions-based approach for continued growth and continued and substantial growth from an objective firm.
Thank you, sir. Are y'all okay with having Freeze and Nichols be that objective firm? Minus Paul. No, Paul doesn't agree. Amarillo chose Kimley Horn, but I had several of y'all, when I did meet with y'all, that said you'd like to stick with FMI because we'd already done all our work, they know Kenyon, so I heard that from several of them.
And they've been doing, Kimberly Warren's been doing work with him too.
So is that gonna be a problem with our partnership with Amarillo, two different firms?
No, I don't think so at all, and I've talked to Freeze and Nichols about having those, that they would be tasked to have conversations with Kimley Horn and how that's going up there. There's going to be some directed conversations in that regard. And they're the two big ones, they're the two big firms. I don't have any issues.
I don't believe in consistency.
Agreed. So there's a motion on the table.
I'll second it.
Have a motion, second. Is there any further discussion?
I just think it's important, again, to reiterate that, as long as we're being objective, look I'm sure you'll put people on those committees, we will put people on those committees that make sure that that happens. Because if they don't, it's just gonna hink up the process. We're gonna throw people on there that are gonna slow things down. And I hate for it to start off like that, but just do us right. I trust y'all most of the time.
Chuck, can you put that in a book? Put it in Cody's black book. Yes, there's a second on the table.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. All right, well, thank you. So, a lot of work digging into this, and appreciate all the hard work.
Anybody wants to sit down and discuss again, we're always happy to meet with you anytime, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. We want to take a 5-minute break. It's 6:52. You know what? Let's be back at 7 o'clock.
What time is your meeting?
You have my number.
No, that's
No,
fine.
you
You just need to sign.
But I'm still.
No, I don't take that.
Engineering question. Video up here is when it's going, at least if it's anything else.
I think that's what I want. The numbers on like how many houses, for like the density, they want me to see the more areas, how much they consider for area A. Here's gonna be the area. So, bothers you if I call you for that or not? No.
What's that?
You know, I went in. I get it.